Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Planning Board meeting for October 2021. To begin, would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll begin with some business items. Correspondence. Is there any correspondence?
Don't look like any.
Don't see any.
Nope.
Let's move on to the minutes of September 27th, 2021. Have you had a chance to review the minutes?
Yeah.
Any corrections or changes?
None.
None here.
Do you have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Our chair, Rich Fahn, has been called to a meeting at work this evening and cannot join us, but we do have a quorum of 3. Almost didn't, but we do. Because Mr. Garrigan was out in a meeting of his own in the parking lot and he just finished it. In any event, we do have a public hearing scheduled for this evening. I'd like to call on Bird Bus Sales and Service. This is for a proposed bus sales and service facility at a former car dealership on 2.71 acres in the C4 zone located at 3805 Crampon Road. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. For the record, Paul Dumont with JMC, here tonight on behalf of Bird Bus Sales and Service. We're before you tonight for the public hearing on the project. Again, this is the reoccupation of the former Kia dealership by a school bus sales dealership. It's at 3805 Crampon Road, and it's in the C4 zoning district. Since we were last before you, we've appeared before the Advisory Board of Architecture and Community Appearance. We presented the architecture as well as the landscaping, and we did receive some comments from the board, which we did address in a submission last Friday, which your board may have seen. We also submitted a lighting plan, as we had discussed at the last meeting. So we will be discussing that again with the board at their next meeting. But again, tonight we're here to answer any questions from your board or the public on the project.
Any comments from the board?
None.
Any comments from members of the public?
Do you want to describe this new site plan and the changes?
Sure. So again, we're talking about the reoccupation of the former Kia dealership. In order to facilitate the reoccupation by Bird Bus, there's some renovations to the buildings that are proposed. The front building, which faces Route 202 Crampon Road, will be renovated on the inside to facilitate the new office for Bird Bus, as well as some facade improvements. And the rear garage building is going to be renovated as well, and the roof raised to permit school buses to enter the garage building. As far as the site plan goes, Robin, if you could just flip to the site plan, please. Thank you. We're proposing a school bus storage area on the bottom of the plan, which is the east of the site, which will be screened by a landscaped island that we're creating and screening with some green giant arborvitae plantings. The front of the property will be used for customer parking with all of the existing curb cuts to remain and not be modified. And the rear of the site will be used for employee parking. In addition, we are in coordination with the ABACA. We had proposed some landscaping plantings on the west side of the site to soften the elevation of the garage, and that's the side of the building that faces the diner. And I think that sums up the site improvements.
Anything you're doing in the islands that front on Route 6?
We're not proposing any landscaping in the islands along Route 6.
What's there now?
There actually is a Westchester County bus stop in one of the islands, and there's just some like hardscape. There's some like gravel, and I believe there were some plantings, but they've been not maintained.
Could you submit some, like, pictures for the board for the before the next
Yeah.
meeting?
Sure.
That'd be helpful.
Now, in addition to, before we get back to the public comment, there was a letter that we received from the Westchester County Planning Board. Did you see that letter?
Yes, yep.
Of October 12th?
yes.
They reference a few items in there. Could you address some of the things they talk about sidewalks in
Mhm.
particular? You just discussed what you might not be doing on the street,
Mm-hmm.
on the 202 side. Can you address the issue of sidewalks?
Sure. So we did have a chance to review that letter from the county, and we did discuss it with the applicant. The applicant did not have any plans to construct a sidewalk along the site's frontage. There's some intricacies there in the permitting involved in that with the DOT and their requirements as well. But is that something that the board would like to see, or?
Well,
I mean-
raise it just because it's part of the public record at this point.
Right.
Why don't we go through the public comments first?
Sure.
And then consider this in connection with any other comments which might be raised this evening. Do you have anything else you want to
Doesn't,
bring up?
no.
Does anyone wish to speak from the public tonight? I see nobody.
Well, it's a reuse, you know, I mean,
Well, this just went to an informational
yeah,
last month,
so they know.
so it's fresh in people's minds. Then maybe we should discuss some of those recommendations at this point. Did you see the ones from West?
Yeah, the thing that concerned me was the idling of the buses.
Yes.
You know, by law, you can't idle a bus more than 3 minutes, I'd assume. They'll address
Right.
that?
Right, yeah, there was no, when I discussed that with Robert Reichenbach, president of Bird Bus Service, he had no issue with that idling restriction.
Yeah.
How many buses do you anticipate would be stored on the site at any one time?
So, there is a special permit criteria for this use which limits the total number of vehicles that could be stored. We're proposing 48 vehicles to be stored on the property. And that's in that shaded dashed area on the bottom of the plan.
And that's currently, I presume that's currently impervious?
Correct, yep.
And it was a car dealership prior, so.
Right.
My sense would be anything you could do to soften along the road there, where, you know, what do we have there, gravel or mulch? Anything that can be done to soften that would be good. You know, you drive down Route 6,
Mm-hmm.
considerably good work has been done of making that corridor softer on the edge, if you will.
Right.
That would be helpful. And then obviously the key thing is for the neighbors around there is the lighting plan,
Mm-hmm.
which we've talked about.
Yes. One thing that's unique about the property is that, Robin, if you could just flip back to the site plan, please. The property line for the property runs immediately behind those islands, so there's no part within the applicant's property, those landscape islands are completely within DOT right-of-way, and anything there, plantings, anything that we would do would be subject to DOT permitting, and it would be also considered as a use and occupancy permitting through the DOT, which is essentially them allowing you to use and maintain their land. So it adds a layer of complexity to the permitting, and it also adds fees that the DOT would be asking for on a yearly basis for anything within their right-of-way. And at this time, it's the applicant's preference not to landscape those islands in speaking with them.
Any idea of where the county was suggesting the sidewalks would go?
I believe they were suggesting in those islands along the frontage. I will note that they're looking up and down the corridor or east and west on that corridor. There's really no sidewalks in the immediate area. There's the bariatric group building, which does not have sidewalks to the east, and then there's the little cabin sandwich shop, and then there's Nestle. So there's quite a big stretch there with no sidewalks, as well as toward the west where you have the 202 diner, and then you have some of the car dealerships there.
Have we done sidewalks anywhere else up on 202 over there?
DOT has done sidewalks when they are doing a road project in the area. So in other words, when they did the Lexington Avenue light, they did some sidewalks in that area, as I recall.
I see.
Goes across, I think, up to past Savannah's. Of course, when they did the Pine Grove light, they also did sidewalks down the hill and so forth. I don't recall how far they go down past Pine Grove, if at all, but they are required under their own policies to do pedestrian amenities wherever it is feasible. The town has not done any in that area.
Any other comments on this question?
No.
So at this point, we have some work that needs to be done, but we have a public hearing at which no one spoke, so I assume we can close that at this point.
Mhm.
I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Public hearing is closed, and there's still some more work that you want to do on this, but you can come back to us again, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, we still have to, again, return back to the ABACA to discuss the architectural changes and the lighting and the landscaping, so we'll be back before you after that meeting.
In your packet, if you can look at the, if you would note the pictures that show the signage, it is fairly wild. And so,
You're referring to the,
Garden Lane.
Right.
And even part of, I think it's Route 6. I mean, I think it should be cleaned and maintained in some fashion, so. As far as the permit, I would suggest, I think what the applicant is alluding to is that they don't want the permit to hold them up in order to get constructed and open, right?
for a DOT permit
Yes.
for the landscaping.
Mhm.
I mean, certainly, yes, wouldn't like it to hold us up. And in talking with the applicant, they weren't, they were not really wanting to propose any landscaping at all there
Mhm.
along the frontage.
Okay. So I think if you take some additional pictures of both
Mhm.
Garden Lane and, I know we have a picture, but if you just take some additional ones so it can be a discussion at the next meeting.
Sure.
Because certainly when you look at those photographs that are in the book, I mean, they're unkept. And as you know, commercial frontage usually is required to maintain out to the curb. So,
And John, you're referring to just the overgrowth on that side of the site?
Yeah.
So that's sort of where we're proposing that row of green giants on that side. So
right.
that whole area would certainly be cleaned up, and that was our intention.
Right.
We could make that more clear.
Yeah, that should be more clear because there's an entire, I see the green giants, but it's in front of the one section of the building and you have
Yep.
the curb that goes all the way to the very corner.
Yep.
So it is fairly long
Side of
and
the
you're not
building?
showing anything in the actual right-of-way.
Yeah.
Yep. Understood.
Yeah.
So we could add some notation about that.
Nothing.
But yes, all that vegetation will be clean. It is a mess.
Just on one corner. Just on the eastern side, is that correct? Where you have the landscaping?
Right, that's just in front of the garage
Nothing-
building.
Nothing in front of the building?
No, nothing in front of the dealership building. That facade has more architectural elements, where the garage building's facade was very bare. So the advisory board thought that it would be fit to have some landscaping there, or something to soften that side of the building.
How flexible on this question can we be? Can we move this project forward and then look for landscaping at some point in the future?
Well, I think you could ask them to develop, some sort of landscaping plan in which they would need to go to DOT. If it's in the Route 6 right-of-way, they would need to go to DOT for the permit. But you can put, some, like almost a phase on this so that they're not hung up in getting their building permit, getting through, and possibly even getting open before that is resolved. It would take a little bit further discussion with the applicant. On the Garden Lane side, that's town right away, and you can require landscaping and beautification for that as part of the normal landscaping
There's
plan.
some up, I see some. Yeah.
Was there an issue with Garden Lane, though, being non-maintained road or something like that?
This section along this frontage is basically owned by the neighbors and not by the town. The town is not willing to take it until it is, brought up to a certain standard.
Okay, so
So we ask for additional landscaping as part of this, but not hold up the rest of the
Right.
application, perhaps?
well, we could ask him to explore the landscaping and see how he, see
Yeah,
what he comes up with.
We could certainly discuss it with the applicant. That's not a problem. The only comment I would have is just in the language that it be just worded in a way that doesn't tie us to that. The DOT with the use and occupancy permitting, it's a, in some cases we've seen them not want to issue that kind of permit to have that landscaping in certain areas. So it's all subject to DOT's review, and we just wouldn't want to be held to that. So,
Okay, so we
and there's the bus stop too, which we have to work around. So we could certainly explore it and talk to the applicant about it.
Okay.
All right, part of the
Let's
future.
do that.
Okay.
I'll come back next time with some information on that, and we'll
Okay.
move forward. Okay?
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Granite Knolls Park Solar Project. This is a public informational hearing designed to bring information about this project to the public and solicit comments and questions at a preliminary stage. It is not the formal public hearing that we would be holding later on. This is located at 2975 Stony Street. It's a 1.3 megawatt AC community solar project with ground-mounted panels, a solar carport system, and battery storage at Granite Knolls Park. Good evening.
Good evening. Yeah, so you described it pretty well there. Overall, it's about a 1.7 acre carport system, as well as a 1.5 acre ground mounted system at Granite Knolls Park. We've submitted a full set of site plans, a full EAF, the application materials, and would like any feedback or answer any questions you have.
Well, why don't you do a bit of a presentation for the benefit of the public so
Okay.
that they can see what the project entails, and then we'll solicit comments.
Okay, sounds good. So my name is Eric Redding with Bergman. We're the engineers on the project. We're proposing a 1.3 megawatt AC community solar project. The project consists of a 1.7 acre solar carport system, as well as a 1.5 acre ground mounted system at Granite Knolls Park. It's along Stony Street. The ground mounted array is located mostly in the a lawn area to the northeast portion of the project site. There is a minor amount of tree clearing that would be done to the southeastern edge of the ground mounted array, and that's to reduce the amount of shading on the system. The panels will be approximately 3 feet on the low end and 10 feet on the high end, and be fully enclosed within a 7-foot high chain link fence, and that's per National Electric Code. Any soil disturbance in that area would be reseeded with a pollinator, wildflower type of seed mix, which is friendly for pollinators. And then the grass would be maintained as kind of a meadow type of height, so about a foot high or so, mowed a few times a year. The solar carport system would be on top of the existing gravel parking lot, so there would be no increase in impervious area in that area. Disturbance is going to be kept under 1 acre overall, so there's no any stormwater requirements for treatment from the New York State DEC or the New York City DEP. And that about covers it.
How high are the panels over the canopy panels?
The
over
canopy
parking lot?
panels, I'm not exactly sure, but it'll be a sufficient height, say 12 to 15 feet high will be the canopies, but I can get some more detailed information on that.
Okay. And have you done any view shed sections or analysis or anything like that?
No, we have not.
I have a question. What type of battery, you say battery storage? What kind of, what type of batteries are you storing?
Yeah, so it's just enclosed battery storage within. It almost looks like a storage container
No,
type of.
no, the
thing.
manufacturer, and what is the nomenclature for the battery? What do you call them? Alkaline,
What?
Lithium ion?
lithium
What kind of
ion?
battery is it?
Oh, I'm not exactly sure the technical specs on it, but
You know the size, the nameplate size?
no, not yet.
Do you,
Yeah, so
do you
there's
have
some details.
any proposal to encapsulate these batteries in a fireproof system?
Yes. Yep.
Concrete bin?
They'll be fully enclosed within a container, not a concrete structure, but it certainly they can be if required. But they would be enclosed within a container.
Well, we require our gas stations, if they had an outside storage tank of any sort, to be encapsulated, so.
Including the
I
battery
think
storage.
That would be,
Yeah, I don't see, I see material submitted on the panels, but I don't see anything
On the
submitted
battery.
on the batteries
nothing.
in your package. I don't know if that's been filed and we just didn't get it tonight.
Nope, not yet. So we do have to still file the application for the battery storage system, and then we could provide the additional details as well.
All right, so tonight we're just focusing on the panels, solar energy collectors, and then we'll do the battery storage. We'll get some more information on that from you.
Yep, yeah, we can definitely supply some more information on that.
The size, the type, and where they're located.
Yep, yeah. So on we do show the approximate location on the site plan right now, but we can come back with cut sheets on them of more of what they're going to be, materials, and sizing and things like that as well.
Okay, it looks like it's a relatively small
Yeah.
system compared to some that we've seen.
Gee,
Overall, yeah, the 1.3 megawatts is small. The New York Sun can go up. The community solar program can go up to 5 megawatts.
Anything from you?
John, does the battery require a separate permit from the overall solar system?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, so that application we'll file that in the next before the next meeting.
Okay, are there any questions from the public? Yes, please step forward.
Good evening, Jay Kopstein. As I recall, and I could be wrong, that the original proposal was just for the solar on top of the carport. Was that the original proposal?
I think that it may have been the original discussion, but shortly on the heels of that discussion came the other additional field there. That's been part of it.
Well, I would remind the board that first, this is a park. The carport is fine, it's relatively unobtrusive. Ground-mounted arrays are obtrusive. I personally don't believe it belongs in a public park. It's a beautiful facility, that's first. Secondly, this is an informational hearing. The applicant had demonstrated to you a lack of information. He's not providing us with a lot of information. I think if nothing else, this hearing has to be kept open for another informational hearing where the applicant can actually provide information. And again, ground-mounted battery storage. I would remind the board, this is a public park. It's not an industrial site. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
How you doing today? Patrick Comiskey, Vice Chair, Parks and Rec Commission. So I'll be taking lead on this for the Parks and Rec Commission. So I went through the details to, obviously some of you may or may not know, occupation. I'm Regional Operations Manager for Walsh Construction. I manage about $1 billion worth of construction going on right now. So kind of familiar with this kind of stuff. I would call these plans like a 10% plan. It's completely devoid of any information that would be utility to me to see how it's going to impact the rest of our park. I apologize. I did want to send you an email outlining all my concerns, but there are many. The starting with the application itself, it's got a lot of errors in it. So if you want me to go through them, I will. If not, I'll send you an email for it. But, you know, simple things like the total acreage right now is not the total acreage of the park. It's just the acreage of this section of the park. The talks about boundarying an existing state or county park. This is actually a town park, so I don't know if there's a state or county aspect of any of things around us, but it's not. Talks about being in the Yorktown Central School District. It's actually Lakeland, where this park is located. So let me just go forward a couple more. It requires approval of other agencies. It already had approval for the Parks and Rec Commission. That wasn't listed. It says that it is not located in a local waterfront revitalization program. That's page 2. It actually is. This is part of the Mohegan Lake revitalization program. Again, school district on page 3. It's Lakeland. One of my biggest concerns, page 3 of 13, it talks about 6 months of construction. On page 8 of 13, it talks about 4 months of construction. So the construction schedule is going to be something I'm going to be monitoring very closely. This, obviously, when they start taking up parking, as everybody that's been up there with any of your family members, my daughter plays there, soccer, lacrosse pretty regularly, the parking is a problem. It's a big problem for us. So I understand there's an investment that we're making to build this, so I'm asking that the construction be done during the late fall into the winter. I know that makes it harder. I know that makes it more expensive, but it also makes it as unobtrusive as possible to the recreation aspect of this and the teams and everything that are up there. So I'd rather not shut down this park after everything we went through with Legacy. And knowing what I know about construction delays, different things, I don't want to gamble and all of a sudden not have a facility available for the spring or for the fall season. I think that'd be a huge problem for our teams and for our community. So that is one thing I'm very eager to know about. What is their construction schedule? It talks about in project operations, there's no excavation listed. So I find it very hard to believe. I don't know because, again, 10% drawings. Where's the duct banks? I'm assuming that there's going to be some kind of electrical that's gathered, transported to a wire to the rest of it. None of that's shown on any of these drawings. It also talks about not having any kind of stormwater increase, what the gentleman just said. Well, I keep the paving to the parking lot to the side. This still is going to collect a lot of water. You know, the rain is still going to fall on those panels. I don't know how that rain is going to be collected. I don't know how that's going to affect what's going to happen in the parking lot. It could cause some erosion of the parking lot itself. So that is something I'm very eager to find out, especially on the taller ones. What is actually the drainage system that goes along with this, or does it just fall off the sides or roll down the slope? Talks about on page 6 of 13 that it's not going to disturb more than 1 acre of stormwater runoff. Obviously, the panels themselves are over an acre, so it's going to disturb more. You bear with me. I already talked about page 8 of 13. The construction is now listed as 4 months versus 6 months on page 3. Existing land use, page 9 of 13. Recreational isn't listed. That's a pretty important part of it because that's what this whole facility is, which goes to the top of page 13. Is it presently being used by members of the community for public recreation? And the answer is no. So obviously that's an error. I think so. On page 13 to 13, it asks about if it's adjacent to an area designated as a sensitive archaeological site. I didn't know the answer to this one. It's clicked yes. The only thing I could think of is maybe is the quarry one of that type of site. So I didn't understand why that was clicked yes. As far as the drawings go, I'll spare. I won't go page by page. Major issues I have with the drawing. The proposed ground mounted, the ground mounted area, I don't think the applicant has taken into account the topography of the site. So if that's where our overflow parking lot is right now, when you come up the driveway and you'll see the maintenance shed right there. If you go to the right, that's our ground parking lot. It's a cliff right off that edge. We've actually talked about putting something up there so nobody drives off the edge, maybe some stones or some kind of barricade. So, and they show that the gates for their facility is going to open up into that area. So my concern is, have they really taken into account the cuts and fills that they're going to have to build what they're showing in that particular area? I think they may want to go back out there and do, if you look at the drawings, the only topography shown is the parking lot. So as everybody knows, we chopped off the top of a mountain to build this facility. So I think that's got to be looked into. Again, same thing, cut fill locations. Utilities. Any utilities being installed is associated with this, and if there's going to be any interference with existing utilities. I don't know if the applicant has looked into our as-built drawings or even asked for our as-built drawings of what we built in the facility. There are duct banks, there's drainage lines, there's water lines throughout that area. Again, not knowing what they're doing with their utilities, whether there's going to be any kind of interference. That's definitely got to be taken into account. I talked about the drainage system for the canopy. Details for the carport, I was already asked. You know, my concern is emergency vehicles, number one, being able to get underneath this canopy. Maintenance vehicles, any kind of cranes or man lift or anything else to come in and do some of the repairs that we may have to do around the facility, if that's going to actually cut us off. So that's something I'm definitely interested in. There is zero details in this package for anything that's going on, which is the majority of it, which was the carport. So no heights, no drawings, no foundations, nothing. So I don't know what's holding it. Is it just a spread footing at a certain elevation? So again, they said there's no excavation. So I guess I don't know. Obviously it's wrong because there's got to be some type of foundation to hold those poles up. Battery storage was asked. I didn't see anything in here. And then last but not least, construction roads. How they get in and out of here and why they do the work. That obviously goes into the schedule as well. So overall, I got a lot of concerns. I would like to please be involved. I do know a little bit about this, and I thank the gentleman for saying that it was a beautiful park. A lot of us took a lot of pride in building that thing, and I want to make sure that we don't screw it up. Thank you.
Excuse me, can you put those concerns in a memo? So
Absolutely. I meant to send it to you beforehand. I apologize. I've been working 24/7 since July 6th. I closed out a geo on Wednesday, and after Wednesday, I'm gonna catch my breath. So my next geo doesn't start until November 15th, and I got to do that through January. But yeah, so we've been working a lot of hours.
I appreciate your references as you went along to your concerns.
Yeah.
Because you do seem like you know what you're doing.
Yeah. So anyway, those are my concerns. I'm not really sure where we are in this process. If it's just, hey, public, we're going to build this here.
Yeah.
Let you know
Right.
about it. But I mean, there's not a contractor in the world that can build off these drawings.
No.
So
Before you go,
Sure.
let me just, you're affiliated with the Parks and Rec Commission?
I'm the vice chair of the Parks and Rec Commission. Yes, sir.
And the applicant, according to the information I have, is HESP Solar LLC. Is that not, that's not an agency of the town, right?
No, as far as I know, no.
Do you know how that developed? Was the Parks and Rec Commission involved in setting this up?
Absolutely, sir. Yes.
Okay, so notwithstanding all of the concerns that you just spoke about, the commission is in favor of this kind of project, is that?
Yes.
Is that right?
The add-on portion of it. I mean, I understand this gentleman is not happy with it. It doesn't bother me. It's property that's off to the side. Nobody really looks over there anyway. My bigger concern is that somebody's going to add a lot of fill to that area to make it level enough for that, especially if that's going to be their main entrance and exit with the way their gates are positioned in the drawings. So that will have an impact on the drainage and everything else we have set up out there.
Okay.
Could that area where they're contemplating the ground mount, could that area be used as parking if it were, maybe with a gravel, not asphalt, but
Not without a significant fill and some type of retaining wall. Whether that or you'd have to cut a road down, similar to the way that we have a slope coming around. You'd have to cut another road down there and level it off down there. But I'd have to go back to Mr. Rena to find out what we did over there as far as settlement ponds and everything else that we put in there. And I'm not sure. There's a lot of wet areas around here, so we try to avoid those best we could.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak or ask questions? I don't see any.
So
So shall we close this?
we close it
Well-
and
Well, it was suggested that you keep it open for the additional battery information.
oh, right. Will they be able to do it for the next meeting?
Well, I hope.
Will you guys be able to get your
Yeah.
the battery stuff for the next meeting?
Yeah, we can get the battery information for the next meeting, and address some of the additional information that was requested as well.
You'll address some of the comments that were made.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and as we work through this process, the design process, we are still pretty early. But yep, we continue to add detail to the plans and things like that, electrical details. So that will all be added to the plans as well throughout the process.
Okay.
So it's good to hear this feedback early on, so we can address it.
Excuse-
Motion to adjourn then.
Well, excuse me. So this is, I'm sorry, this is public informational, then I would say that you can close it.
And then we'll have a public
You're
hearing.
gonna have a you're gonna have a public hearing
Anyway.
subsequent to this, yes, so, my mistake, I think you can close it.
Okay, all right,
Okay. Motion to close.
thank you. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Should put him on a payroll.
What?
You should put him on the payroll.
Oh, yeah, yep,
You know,
definitely.
doing.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, the next couple of items on the agenda relate to some extensions on matters we dealt with before. Number 5 is the Roberta Front Street application. It is a request for the second one-year time extension located on Front Street. Good evening.
Good evening, Joseph Reina, the Principal Site Design Consultants, representing Mr. Roberta. Mr. Roberta is requesting a second extension of his approval. He has not been able to bring in some tenants to give him the impetus to start building, so he'd like to continue on with his approval. Nothing has changed on the site plan.
No problem.
All right, motion?
Motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Bingo.
Thank you. Next item, number 6, is referencing the Monjero Properties LLC at Sawmill River Road. Good evening.
Good evening, Board. Michael Grace, I'm representing Mr. Monjero. We're obviously looking for the extension, but we want to get a modification on the approving resolutions that required this property to install a traffic light on 118. We discussed it, I guess, at an earlier meeting. It's just, and at that point, I think, John, you wanted to take a look at how the condition of approval to install the traffic light came about. And I believe the town has met with Phil Greeley as well, the town's traffic consultant. My position on this is that this particular condition is sterilizing the property. The site plan for approval is for 3,600 square feet. So that would be akin to a single store maybe at Yorktown Green. 3,600 square feet is very, very, very modest sized building. And at the time that it was first approved, I believe that was for a bank. And the bank probably made a voluntary concession to put that light in place. But that light is probably in the neighborhood of, and the road improvements that are going to be required is probably close to $1 million. So the property has no value; it can't be developed. It's under contract now, but one of the conditions is to remove that condition of approval, which is the traffic light. I could see it being reasonable if it were even legal to require something like this if you were looking at 360,000 square feet, but not for 3,600 square feet. It's a single store. There's just absolutely, on its face, that can't be any justification for requiring the development of a 3,600 square foot store or building to put up a traffic light. It's complete overreach. And how it got in there was probably on concession by the bank, which wouldn't have been unusual. But we're asking that be removed.
Well, I don't think a 3,600 square foot store would generate enough traffic to encompass it.
No, and
a traffic light.
I don't want to do a whole lecture on highway improvements and financing and everything else, but it's without it being a voluntary contribution, you really can't enforce it and do it.
And if you put a traffic light in, the guy can't build a building. It's $1 million traffic light.
Yeah,
Wouldn't improve it.
absolutely.
And then we're killing the project. It's not right.
You can't. A traffic light on a state road, as the width of the state road, and everything else that's you're looking probably at close to $1 million. And if it is a traffic light that the state wants on its road, it should put it in.
They should put it in at their cost.
But if the prior contract vendee thought that was a good idea to voluntarily concede to do it, that's one thing. But at this point, it's just you're absolutely killing it, and you're sterilizing the property, and you can't in good conscience. I mean, you just can't in good conscience justify it on any grounds whatsoever, especially since even now, since the Yorktown Green at this point is essentially vacant. I know Uncle Giuseppe's may be going into the old food emporium, but then Uncle Giuseppe's, where it's presently located, is becoming vacant. And if you're actually entertaining the redevelopment of the Yorktown Green site, maybe at that point you consider it, or you consider it in conjunction with the state. But you still have legal issues in compelling it, because there's this infamous Court of Appeals case, the town of Guilderland, which basically prohibits towns from kind of devising these alternative means of financing highway improvements, because the highway law actually is pretty much exclusive and precludes other schemes. So you'd have to actually, I mean, if it was a voluntary contribution that somehow merged into the approval resolution, that's one thing. But at this point, I don't. I was asked, well, maybe I should go get someone to study what I can't. You can't. In good faith, tell me. The guy's got to spend money to tell you that it's not justified for 3,600 square. You're talking about Das Auto Parts, the store the size of Das Auto Parts. How many? It's just it's. And actually, I don't want to push the issue, but even to the extent that you would make them improve the remaining portion of Downing Drive to town road standards, I think would be an overreach, because it's only a driveway at this point to one site. And so, if the town was looking to have that improved to road standards, town road standards, it's still an enormous expense which is unjustified for this. I just ask that 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 part of the approving resolution be deleted.
Well, your application tonight is for an extension.
Reapprove.
That's what's before us in terms of what's on our agenda. That's what you requested. This application was approved in 2009, I believe, and extended 3 or 4 times thereafter. And this is the first time this issue is coming up. Formally, you did come to an earlier meeting with us, I recall that, and we talked about the impacts of changing that part of the plan, and we didn't get any information back, either showing us why it was put there in the first place, and then kept in there over these many years of extensions and reapprovals, nor was any analysis done if you take it away, what the impacts are going to be. I don't believe can make such a decision without a record to support the direction in which we're going.
I'm going to, I respect where you're coming from, but it's not. You're not naive on these issues. It's 3,600 square feet. You got to understand. 3,600 square feet required. There was required one. It's 4 per 1,000 on parking. So at tops, what do you got? 12 parking spaces, 15 parking spaces, at tops. You're asking a guy to install a traffic light on a state road for a site that's accommodating 15 parking spaces. It's not even. You don't need. It's just on its face. You don't need much more than that to tell you it's complete overreach.
I think part of the concern at the time and even today is, as you know, when any board looks at projects that are coming in and evaluating their ingress and egress from the proposed site into a existing network, there's the volume and the impact to the level of service, just in terms of a numbers situation, but there's also other factors related to safety in terms of ingress and egress and operating the site in this new fashion as it connects to the network. So, for instance, we look at site distance, and if the site distance isn't proper for the sake of safety, there's some mitigation that needs to be done. And I think while I think you're correct that the warrants that were done at the time showed that the existing intersection met the warrants on its own, bringing that site into that network at that junction also had some safety implications that the volume numbers don't really speak to. And I think that was part of the genesis of it. So the suggestion, I think, is that your team writes up, you know, some narrative of what the warrants that were done then say, what the warrants and by the way, the existing situation right now may be less than what it was at the time, and who knows, may not even meet warrants. I'm not sure that would be the case. But I think what is being asked for is some narrative that explains how this site can operate at that junction in that network without presenting serious safety issues to the people that are using the site. I think that's
Right, but
the situation.
It's just, you're just trying to be somewhat pragmatic. You can't tell me that a site that has 15 parking spaces is the marginal difference between having a traffic light at that intersection or not having a traffic light at that intersection. If the warrant existed, again, this is not a condition that's pushing it over the edge. It's not under any conceivable set of circumstances can you say, if it is an issue that the ingress and egress may have to be, a little bit more clearing at the corner or something like that, that's one thing. But I just wanted, I guess I want to get the temperature of the board. I mean, I just don't, and listen, I understand the horse trading that goes on because of past experiences. And I understand that the town would like to get improvements that it would want at somebody else's dime. And you can bargain for that if there's a concession. But this is just, you actually, you're dangerously coming close to having a taking of the property by keeping the condition in there. So, I mean, I got a client that's going to be forced to litigate it.
I'm
And I don't
not
wanna go
sure
there.
you're gonna be very, I mean, this, like I said, this was approved with those conditions in 2009.
Right.
Okay, all you're asking for is an extension, a
Right, and you
reapproval.
have the authority to
If we were to reapprove this as is, does that block or stop further discussion on your request for a modification afterwards?
No, you actually may just you probably reactivate my time to actually bring a cause of action to have it removed as is. But I don't want to go. I don't want to go there. The thing is, you have the authority and the ability to remove it based upon just the clear facts. I mean, that's what you do. You exercise your judgment in these matters, and that's what that's what you're there for. That's what you do.
Let me hear from the town attorney, please.
Yeah, I appreciate the point you're making, but there's no factual basis to justify a change. There's a statement that I can't sell the property without it being removed, but there's no factual basis before the board to make that request. And let me just finish.
Okay.
In addition, as we learned recently, amending a site plan requires, including amending a condition in a resolution, requires both a public informational and a public hearing. So those are steps that are going to have to be taken. The act of extending is not something that requires a public hearing. So that can be done tonight and probably should be done tonight. The other item is going to require some factual development.
And some environmental, and secret compliance, I would assume.
A minimum traffic.
Minimum, okay. So why don't we approve and then further
Okay.
work on the other issue?
Yeah.
Can the public say anything? I know it's not a public hearing,
No.
public comment.
No.
What was the, John, what's the origin of the light, the need for the light?
It came about during the review of this site plan proposal, and it was the question that was initially asked, what happens when you add this fourth leg to this three-leg intersection? What happens to the safety? What happens to the operation, et cetera? As it turned out, the operation was already meeting warrants for a light already, so it was underserved already. So Michael is correct on that. However, there was, part of this discussion, the reason it came about was the discussion of the safety of moving in and out of the site from that three-way intersection, which is already in a compromised state as it is without a light. So that was how it came about.
Yeah, and
So, wasn't the bypass part of this project?
yes, and the bypass has never happened.
The town's got, just for people should know, on the west side of this property, there is a right-of-way that goes from 202 in between the bank and I think this property.
It's Falkenberg's property, yeah.
And then it would curve down and pick up the driveway we're talking.
It was supposed to take, drain off the right-hand turn
Yeah.
from the intersection.
Right,
And that was, and so you had the AT&T cable litigation, which I was involved with the town attorney back in the late 80s, I think. And they finally lowered that. But the thing is that, you know, and I'll take exception that it's not a factual basis. There is a factual basis. It's that you don't have to, you know, this just doesn't require an expert review to understand that 3,600 square feet is not the,
But it requires something.
I'll do it. I'll take
Let me suggest the following. Why don't we do the reapproval and keep your application open to modify it if with the proper record and support, then we can consider it and move.
that'll be fine. I just want, and I'm not trying to be, you know, I apologize if I'm a little bit over aggressive about it. It's just,
No.
it's just, you know, I look at it. I've been in the position of horse trading, and you do it when you can do it. And this is a typical, you know, horse trading maneuver that occurred decades ago, which may have made sense. But now what you've done is it's just a complete and utter overreach on its face. I mean, you don't need too much more.
It was
but-
done a long time ago. Okay. Any other discussion from the board?
Well, I don't know, look, the way I see it, the town wants ratables. This is a ratable that should come to the town. And I don't see why we should hold it up with a cost to the applicant
No,
that would exceed the building.
Right, you know, probably at the time, it wasn't a very expensive proposition. Now you're talking, I think Phil Greeley, I had an informal discussion with him, you're looking at $1 million.
But at the time, you were talking to a bank, and the bank has got empty, endless pockets.
Yeah, it's just,
Well, at the time, it was estimated to us at $250,000. Presently, Phil Greeley's last figures from his mouth was $750,000.
and
That's still not
Town
peanuts.
attorney has advised us on
Not
the
peanuts
proper
in either way.
procedure.
Right,
Let's follow
I'm
that.
all for that, yes.
and I'll go, and I'll also at that point probably open up, just to, you know, to give you a forewarning, I'll probably open up the whole issue as to whether or not the thing should be improved to town road standards, because it really is just a driveway at this time. I don't think that the bypass is ever gonna happen, doesn't seem like it's ever gonna happen.
Well,
So the thing
Let's
is
see.
that, you know, and should they you adopt the overlay and all sorts of other things, you're going to be looking, but that is, then the costs of that are really a general fund charge,
all right,
and that's where it should lie. So I'll do both, though. Thank you for your time.
all right. Motion on anything?
Make a motion to provide the extension.
Yes, second motion.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Another extension. This is number 7 on our agenda. This has to do with the Colangelo Major Subdivision. It's a second 90-day time extension for 1805 Jacob Road on a 6-lot subdivision. Good evening.
Good evening, Joseph Rena, Principal Site Design Consultants, representing Featherbed Properties. The finish line is in sight on this. We're waiting to finalize Health Department approval. The attorney on the project has all of the legal documents, easements, and agreements in draft form, waiting for approval by the client, and then it'll be submitted to the planning board attorney for review. So at this point, we're getting real close to having this complete.
Okay, and nothing has changed? Everything?
Nothing has changed in substance to the plan.
Questions, comments,
No,
motion?
motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You got it, thank you.
Thank you.
I think you have almost the rest of the agenda. That
That's it.
concludes the
Now we gotta go to work session.
regular session. Motion to close the regular session.
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We're gonna move into the work session portion of the agenda. Number 8 is the first item up, Home and Hearth. Home and Hearth, this is a site plan at 1750 East Main Street.
Okay. So we were last before you, unless we showed you this on a conceptual basis. Home and Hearth is an operation. It's currently in the town of Cortland, further down on Route 6. They sell fireplaces, fireplace equipment, kitchens, and fireplace supplies. Their biggest business are pellets. What they're proposing is to build a 5,500 square foot building, which will be mostly showroom. A small back portion of the building will have some storage use. There'll be a loft with some offices for the ownership and business management. And they're also proposing a 4,500 square foot building, which will be just storage of mostly of the pellets and other supplies. The site is currently mostly developed, and the amount of development we're proposing here is pretty much in the context of what's been already improved on the site. There's two existing buildings on the site which will be raised, and the parking area for the site comes out almost to the edge of the wetland, which is essentially the footprint of what we're going to be proposing. As you can see, we're showing an entrance off of Route 6, parking on both sides. We're using pretty much the same entrance that's there now. A loading area, dumpster area. This is the improvement. Oh, sorry, if you load the full plan. The improvement plan, which shows our proposed stormwater. We're going to do detention under the parking lot up to the 100-year storm. And we have a rain garden off wedged in here, and it goes out in behind this building, which will provide stormwater quality treatment for the stormwater. This wetland is a DEC wetland. Required a permit from the DEC. Steve Marino is here with me from Tim Miller Associates, and he's going to talk about the mitigation for that. At this point, we've submitted a complete set of engineered drawings as well as a SWIP, and we're looking at this point to move on to the public hearing stage of the project. Steve, you want to?
Good evening, Steve Marino, Tim Miller Associates. As Joe mentioned, the site backs up against a DEC wetland that's associated with the Mohegan Lake outlet there to the north. You can see the stream running along the edge of the property line there to the north. Our proposal maintains the existing disturbed envelope where the proposed warehouse building is going. At the rear of the lot is currently used for pallets of the pellets and other storage on site. There are 2 large containers on site. So the proposed activity is consistent with what's been going on for a number of years on the site. The DEC wetland is relatively undisturbed once you get past 6 or 8 feet from the edge of the property. We have delineated the wetland, and it has been approved by the DEC. So what we're proposing now is, post-construction, is some enhancement of the wetland buffer with plantings around the proposed rain garden, as well as behind the buildings to soften the edge back to the existing wetland. A primary issue with the wetland in the back currently is uncontrolled stormwater runoff. There's currently no capture and treatment of runoff on the site. So as Joe mentioned, he's proposing subsurface drainage improvements under the parking lot to capture and treat that water before it gets discharged to the wetland, compared to how it is currently untreated. Kind of cut and dry. Again, it's a developed site. This is a redevelopment project maintained within the envelope of current disturbance. Once we get past the planning board in terms of this informational portion of our program, we will be going to the DEC for a DEC approval. We just wanted to make sure we were getting close to the footprints before we approach the DEC. Any questions? We're here.
Thank you.
So we'll be presenting this to the Conservation Board on Wednesday night.
Okay.
So at this point, we're looking to schedule the informational hearing on the project.
Public hearing.
A public hearing, sorry.
Okay. Any comments from the board?
No.
There's the
John,
issue.
you
of
wanna
the
raise that
easement.
issue?
Yeah, so there's, I guess, an issue of an easement on the property that was raised in a planning board memo. Does that need to be
I don't know if they saw it. Can you put the
Yes.
other site plan up that shows the layout of the property next door? This property is right next to the, I think it's a BP gas station now. It used to
Correct.
be Bollinger's Garage. And there is an easement, if you can blow up that corner. The
Yeah.
concern was raised about the proximity of the traveled portion of that easement to the corner of your building. And there doesn't seem to be any significant separation between them. And that raises possible safety issues.
Joe, did you get the memo from the planning
I-
board? October
I did, but I did not get a chance to review it.
Okay.
Robin did send it to me. Yeah, I see that, I think we were aware of this easement. We know it didn't really, the building was purposely kept back a little bit from it.
Yeah, there's two curved lines on an arc there. Is one of them a curve and the other one something else, or is that the width of a curve or what?
It's a planted area.
Yeah.
Oh.
We'll get you more detail on it.
So you can.
Before we have by the time we have the public hearing, we'll have more detail on that.
Yeah, the suggestion was to maybe shift the building back a little
Okay.
bit, separate that a bit
Okay.
more.
So where are the pellets being stored?
In the rear building that's proposed?
In the rear building?
Yes.
And what's being stored in the main building?
The main building's gonna be more, well, as I said, they do kitchen cabinets also, so they're gonna be storing that kind of stock in there, as
Yeah.
well as, they're going to, provide service and parts for the stoves that they sell.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all gonna be in the main building.
Are-
There's gonna be a basement area in the main building that'll also be used for storage.
Do the storage of the pellets constitute a certain class of hazardous materials in any way?
That's a question I don't know, I have an answer to, John. I'll try to find out about that.
You might have to put a fire suppression system in there.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A sprinkler, right?
I mean, other than the concerns raised in the memo, I have no issue,
Yeah.
Okay.
with the overall site, gentlemen.
I have no issue with it.
So maybe
In
we
fact,
can
it's
proceed,
probably be welcome there.
we can proceed to a public hearing? Yes, Counselor?
Just, Joe, at the last meeting, you mentioned some architectural drawings.
Right.
Those are needed for the public hearing, so you'll have those by then?
Yep. And
Okay.
and thank you for bringing that up, because one of the things we were hoping to get was a recommendation from the board to the zoning board. I know you really want to see you would want to see the architectural drawings. We're trying to get a little jump on the, going to the ZBA, because that back building, as we discussed, we want to do an architectural feature on the roof that's going to put it above the
Yeah.
maximum height requirement. I was hoping we were going to have those drawings here tonight to show them to you, but we don't. But one of the things we were looking for was a letter of endorsement by you to the
Why don't you-
ZBA.
Can you bring that back to the next meeting?
We could, I
session?
mean, we won't make this month's meeting then to the,
Can we do that
Well-
what's the timing of such a recommendation? Before a public hearing, afterwards, or?
Well, I thought that you could apply to the zoning board and they would set you up for a public hearing for
We
the
could do
following
that.
month.
right, exactly, we
So I
could do
think
that.
there's time to do that.
Okay,
But it would be good to try to get that set of drawings in prior to this public hearing, your public hearing.
Okay,
And also, while I'm speaking, I suggest that you do a map that shows adjacent buildings on adjacent properties, since we're talking a closeness to the lot line and also the subject of the hazardous materials.
okay. Okay,
okay.
that'd be great. So
Set
we,
up a
if, we'll, we'll proceed with making an application to the ZBA in anticipation that in November we'll have a letter from you to the ZBA for that meeting.
Okay.
Remind us again, what was the height of the rear building, the difference between the code and the height you wanted?
I don't know what the architect ended up with on that.
The architect is Phelan?
Yeah.
I think you have 35, oh, is it considered an accessory building? Is that the problem?
I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right, that's what it was.
Right, accessory building and,
Talked about reversing the
right, with,
usage, but
right. But and he went for an interpretation from the building inspector as to whether he would consider it an architectural feature. Because in the past, the building inspector has interpreted architectural features not requiring a height variance. So,
Well, I guess, yeah.
he thought it was safer to go for the variance.
Well, I would question whether it's actually considered an accessory building or not. I mean, you can have two main buildings on a commercial site,
Right.
and I don't know that this is necessarily an incidental use. It actually seems to be part of the main use
Which it
of
is.
storing that material in order to sell it.
Mhm.
And so I would wonder whether or not the height restriction here is not 35 feet as a main building.
That's really what I was trying to say last month. I didn't
Right.
say it that well, but.
So then, I mean, I'll put it to the architect, I mean, that's between him and the building inspector to make that case. And if that's so, we won't need to apply to them, but in the meantime, I'm gonna be thinking about applying to them just to get on their calendar.
Well, if you do apply to them, you may want to pose that question as well to
Right.
the zoning board.
Okay,
Because they could interpret it, they could issue an interpretation that it's really a main building, not an accessory.
Right.
Because like John said, it is an integral part of your use. It's not like a gas station that also fixes cars. This is all, you know, in a sense, retail, specialized, but retail.
Makes sense.
Right.
So we're going to go forward with a hearing in November?
Yeah. Set it up.
okay.
Joe, I would find out whether the pellets are considered hazardous.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't
mean,
think
it's like,
so.
to me, it's,
I mean, they're not
I
volatile.
don't know what,
I think so.
I mean, I think they're just compressed,
They're just compressed wood.
yeah, so,
Yeah, I don't think they're hazardous.
yeah. it's-
That would save you a lot of trouble. A lot of
Yeah, I
trouble.
mean, in my mind, it didn't even, I didn't
Yeah.
even think that it might be considered something that would require
I don't
some
think so.
type of special fire suppression, but we'll find that out.
We'll find out. Well, how do they store it now? They must store it now someplace.
They have two containers on the site that they're putting them in,
Or like a shipping container?
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All righty.
Thank you. But you're still on?
Yeah.
Okay. Next item is number 9 on our agenda, is Visage subdivision. This is a 10-lot subdivision on 8 acres in the R120 zone, located at 3319 Stony Street. We had a public hearing, public informational on this back in August.
So Since we were here in August, we open up. Since we were here in August, we proceeded with doing some of the hard engineering that was required. We did all the testing for the stormwater in coordination with the town engineer's office, and finalized the grading, incorporated some of the improvements that we were asked to include, and we also worked on the orientation of, specifically of the orientation of the two homes closest to Stony Street. The point was made to try not to have those houses facing right onto Stony Street as a backyard. So we did some maneuvering of the lot lines, and we were at least able to get them to be angled somewhat, and it could be pretty well said that they're not directly, the backyards are not directly on Stony Street, but pointed either north or south, more north or south. So that's these two lots here. The layout is essentially the same as what you had seen back at that point. We still have access coming through from High Point Drive and from Shelley, yeah, South Shelley. The final configuration of our drainage is shown on here. We show our catch basins collecting the stormwater off the road, extending down into two infiltration systems, which will be subsurface, so you won't see them. We're tried to the greatest extent possible, maintain as much of a buffer, existing buffer along Stony Street, and whatever we need to do to supplant that with trees or whatnot, we will do. Each of the residents will have a rain garden to treatment of the roofs and driveways for each of the residences. And again, that main system that's up in the corner there is for mostly the road runoff. In this corner here, where there's been some issues in the past with there's a channel that runs down through here, and over the years it's become more and more eroded. There's been some issues there with flooding, so the town engineer has asked us to armor this with some riprap, which we've done, and we're also adding some check dams, stone check dams, up along this part of the channel to slow water down and keep the amount of erosion down and allow the water to get into that drainage system without overtopping and heading out to the road. We're still waiting for the review from the town engineer on this. We've prepared a full SWIP and a full submission with the drawings that we're showing you now. That's about the extent of the real important information. These homes here are going to connect to the existing sewer, which runs along the back of the site here and comes down onto Stony Street. Additional sewer and water will be brought up for these homes on the north side of the proposed High Point Drive extension. As you can see, our roadway, this is our profile of our main roadway. It follows the grade very, very closely. Not a lot of cut. The only part is right in here where we've got at the most about 5 feet of cut in there, which we would consider that doing very well as far as cut and fill goes. So as I said, we've submitted complete drawings. These are all the driveway profiles. This is our drainage profile. I'm sorry, that was our water main profile. These are our drainage profiles. And then as we go on, we've got all our details. Steve Marino is here with me. He has a little additional information to provide you as far as the trees on site. And Steve, what would you like me to open up?
Just the mitigation plan, Joe.
Okay.
Good evening, I'm still Steve Marino from Tim Miller Associates. At the public information hearing, we did talk about the wetlands and how they've formed on the site, how we will be filling in a portion of that wetland in order to access the lower part of the property closer to Stony Street, as well as provide the connection to Shetley. As you can see, the area in red is the area of wetland that would be filled, and the area in yellow is the area of new wetland that would be created on the site. So we did talk about that at the last meeting. Since the last meeting, we have completed a comprehensive tree survey for the property. We've located, identified 479 trees within the limit of disturbance for the proposal. Most of those trees are along the southern part of the property as well as in that northeast corner. We didn't go into the wetlands to identify trees because we don't plan on cutting any trees down in that area. So of the 479 trees, all 6 inches or greater in diameter that we identified, 23 of those trees are large trees, 24 inches in diameter or greater. Now that we have that information, we'll incorporate that into our grading plan and see which of those trees we can preserve as part of the proposal moving forward. But we have completed that, so moving forward we will have more detailed information on the trees, tree loss on the site, as well as having a more detailed mitigation plan. Here you see the concept for the public hearing. We will have a formal planting plan ready as part of the public hearing process. And just so you can see, there are our trees.
Seen that yet. Are we-
Different, oh yeah, let me bring it up.
I mean, I didn't see it in our materials tonight, okay?
Well, we just finished it,
Okay.
so.
So that's gotta go to the tree commission and at least,
Exactly, that will be part
Okay.
of as we move forward now. We have all the information tabulated. We have tree size, tree species, and health general condition of the trees. The different colors only mean the different days we went out there. We were out on a variety of different days, so we just wanted to keep things separate. This is the area of wetland and wetland mitigation that'll be preserved. So we didn't count the trees out there, but we've looked at all the trees. You can see here in the center of the site, which was associated with the old house on the property, as well as the barn, which was located about here. There aren't a lot of trees, but along the south, both in the southeast and southwest, as well as in that northeast corner there. So,
Did you say you were going to try and save some of this for screening?
we're gonna say, particularly along Stony Street.
Stony's
Yeah,
over
right.
here.
Yeah, that's right.
Along the Stony Street side, yeah. And again, there's the trees circled in red are the larger trees, so whatever we can do to manipulate.
You might be able to save them.
save
Have you-
some of
have
those.
you
Some of the,
presented-
most of the trees, I would say probably 80 to 90% of the trees on site are red maples, which is a very common tree around here. But the remaining, there are a number of species out there that are unusual or of a large size. There's some black walnuts that are almost 3 feet in diameter. There's some other trees out there that are nice. So we're gonna, wiggle what we can in order to save some of those bigger trees.
So you identified all the trees, have you prepared a mitigation plan for this yet?
We haven't yet.
Okay.
That'll be prepared for the public hearing.
No questions?
At the public information, I'm sorry, if you're not finished, continue.
No,
This
so,
isn't
so
public information.
our next submission will include the detailed wetland mitigation plan and the tree mitigation plan.
Can I ask a couple questions? So, On Schofield Road, the right-of-way, you're showing a drainage ditch. Is that,
That's existing,
that exists?
yes.
What's the general condition of that and also of this adjacent areas in Schofield Road? My recollection is that it was pretty eroded in there, going all the way up the hill. Is that correct, or?
We've followed the town engineer's lead on that, as far as what he wanted done and what he felt was most important to be treated. I mean, I don't particularly have any issue with doing additional armoring of that channel if that's the consensus. So, you know, we again followed his lead on that.
Okay. Could you provide maybe some pictures along the
Yeah.
route and just
Yeah.
for the board's
Yep.
edification? The other thing is, the two lots as you come into the subdivision from High Point Drive
Yes.
appear to have little to no opportunity for any backyard. And I wonder if those are laid out well enough to be actually proper lots.
Well, we could reorient the homes on those so that they're facing High Point Drive and get the rear yard to be facing south on those.
Okay, and then at the rear of the lot, you can preserve some trees for some buffering and maybe even add some evergreens to help that a little bit more.
I have no issue with doing that.
Okay. And then the last comment I have is the High Point Drive cul-de-sac should probably become a roadway and not a cul-de-sac in the middle of a roadway, so, which is typical of what we plan for, so.
Okay, we'll show that to be removed and just straight roadway in.
And I guess the parts of the circle would be deeded to the abutters.
Yes.
Is that what's usually done?
Yes, and sometimes, well, they can be, but certainly could stay as part of the right-of-way, but certainly the roadway itself should not have a bulge in it,
I
in the
agree.
middle of a travel lane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yep, we could do that.
What impact does that have on the residents that live on that cul-de-sac? I mean, are you talking about actually removing
Yeah.
or replacing the road?
The circle should be removed, and you should have a 24-foot wide roadway that
So it'll be a
basically
straight shot through.
continues, so it's a straight shot.
So
You know,
those
as-
front yards will get larger.
Right,
Yeah.
so their front yard.
Their
would
front
be
yards will
full
get
asphalt
larger.
plank
Right.
grass.
Yeah.
Right.
Whether or not it actually goes into their actual ownership, it will be a front yard that they will probably maintain and so forth and use as their front yard.
At the public informational hearing, a common theme was voiced concerning the access from Shelley Street, you know, the connector.
Mm-hmm.
How wedded are we to that particular access? Is it something that's we have to do? Is it something we can consider removing and just have access on High Point so that the two neighborhoods become, you know, independent at that point? And actually, if you took that out, it would give you a little more room to
Mhm.
work with those homes. So I was wondering what our options are, if any.
On the homes,
No, on the access road.
I'm connecting Shelley through.
your options, there's no hard numbers, but you tend to try to limit the length of dead ends for safety purposes. So you try to have connections, which is what this is doing. In terms of options, you could connect to the other side. This board could actually determine to not make that connection. That is an option, but you have to be aware of the length of road that you're creating without an option for emergency vehicles, so on and so forth. For instance, if the road is ever blocked, all sorts of things can happen that no one really can anticipate. So.
But, okay, I appreciate the concern of limiting the length of a dead-end street, But looking at where this is connecting, it's one lot in to the whole group of homes. So, I mean, I'm not sure how much of an advantage it will really give you and if you want to accomplish that goal. I'm just thinking, because I just remember that, you know, at the hearing, there was a consistent theme of advanced about the connection, so.
I think, and I'd have to go back and look, because it's been a while, to look at the subdivision code and land development code. And I think there's clearly discussion in there about trying to minimize the length of a cul-de-sac to a certain distance. And I don't know what that
Okay.
is. For some reason, I'm thinking it's like 1,500 feet or
Yeah,
something like that.
There's something about 1,500 feet. I don't know if it's in the code as a hard number, but
Right.
it could be.
Why don't we explore that a little bit, see what
But-
our options are?
But the point would be is that if you didn't have the connection and where the cul-de-sac at High Point Drive is now became blocked, you wouldn't have access to 10 homes for emergency purposes.
Okay.
So it's that kind of thing. Just
I mean, I
doing
would-
the best to limit prices.
Okay.
I would
John,
recommend.
If I could just, isn't that why those other side streets kind of, oh, yeah. I think we've had that discussion before as well, is that's why those other side streets connected right up to the edge of this property, envisioning at some point future connections through, whether on the north side or the south side.
That's correct.
I understand, I know,
That's-
I know the
It's
neighborhood.
all for movement
Right.
of people on their cars. It's not necessarily a traffic situation, but it's certainly a convenience, and it does lessen, a concentration of traffic through certain roads.
No,
all
it
that,
doesn't
yeah.
bother me, but, and I think, I mean, I would suggest that you get the opinion of the fire commission on that. 'Cause I think that's gonna be a pretty long roadway. I could tell you how long ours is gonna be. Yeah, so we're at over 500 feet, just our extension of High Point Drive.
500. Okay. Anything else from the board,
Not here.
gentlemen? Well, I think there's more information that you're developing that we need to come together again after you put all that materials together. And maybe refer out as much as we can to our advisory boards and then come back one more time and review it.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to come back with our mitigation plans
Right.
fully developed, and then we can move from there.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you very much. Number 10 on the agenda is 3717 Crampon Road, a pre-preliminary. No, this isn't a
not-
public hearing. You'll have another opportunity if we advance this to the next stage. Okay, but basically, we're not advancing it to the public hearing stage yet because there's more information that we want to get from the applicant that they haven't provided for us, certain mitigation plans and things like that. And we also want to consider the issue of the access and the other issues that were raised at the at the informational hearing. There'll be more opportunity for you to speak. We haven't made a decision yet.
Because there are a number of residents here that are.
I understand that. This is on for a work session portion of our agenda.
Can we just show a?
And people,
How many people?
thank you, listen, thank you for coming. I appreciate your concerns. I thought they were well stated at the public informational hearing. That's why I raised the issue tonight. But this is not the forum for further public input. We will keep moving along on the evaluation and review of this application. And before we can make a decision, there will be at least one other opportunity for members of your neighborhood to come out and speak.
How do we find out when that opportunity is?
That will be notified. Typically, if you follow what we're doing, we will say, all right, next public hearing will take place at a certain date. So we advance it ahead of time.
It showed this as being one of the topics.
We will pick a date in advance, and then notifications will go out to the community in the newspaper, and it will go out to the immediate neighbors by mail. So you will get notified of what's going on.
And you can also send your comments to the board in writing at any time.
Yes. Which I would encourage you to do, because if you send us a comment in writing, it becomes part of our record. And then we're required to take that into account as part of our review process. Okay? So I just want, I understand you came out, but again, this is on our work session portion of the agenda, and we generally do not take public comment at work sessions. There's a formal procedure to have you speak, record your comments, becomes part of the record, and we must consider it as part of our review. That's yet to happen. Okay?
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. This
This is a new application. We're for pre-preliminary review on a site on Crampon Road, 3717 Crampon Road, which was formerly the Windmill Restaurant site.
Okay.
It's this site right here. There's the building. You could see the extent of the parking area there. The applicant is proposing to construct approximately 20,000 square foot building. We're calling it warehouse, but really he wants to put it in terms of flex space. He is looking to get retail space possibly in the front of the building, with a combination of some warehouse uses, maybe provide spaces for small contractors that where they can have a large space to go in and park their trucks or vans and keep equipment and whatnot. In addition to that, in this section here, which is a little under 10,000 square feet, he would have loft offices, which would be accessed from the top side or the back side on Old Crampon. So the extent of the current footprint probably comes to about here right now. Right, so we're extending now up the hill, up this slope. This part of the building would be cut into the slope, and at the upper level you would have this parking area. There's nothing real fancy about this at this point, other than he wanted to get this in front of you to get you thinking about what he wants to do there. His ideal tenant for the retail space would be some type of vendor use, like a Best Plumbing, showroom or something like that.
So the retail space would be at the frontage,
Yeah, yes, correct.
and we don't know how deep that would be.
At this point, no.
Joe, who's the owner?
It's Paul Galero.
Is he local?
He's doing the Soundview project.
Oh, okay.
Right, same.
He built the new Caramount building, right?
And he built the
across the
Caramount,
street.
right, he built the Caramount.
There you go.
So, that's pretty much the extent of it. He just wanted to get it before you see what kind of, reaction we get to that.
Joe, you're right at that point where 202 and Old Compound Road kind of start splitting, and you get into a much more residential area up on that Old Compound Road side.
Correct.
Is this the entire site commercially zoned,
Yes, it is.
front to back?
Yes. It's C4. So the use is consistent with the zone.
You have to
I-
split, one of the things that jumped out at me on this application is you got a front driveway off 202, and then you got a back end off of Crampon. And I was just wondering, you have to do it that way, or is it what the impact would be on Crampon Road, with having the additional traffic over there?
On Old Crampon Road, you mean?
Old Crampon Road, yeah.
Yeah, again, that would be really dedicated to, like, office use. And it would be more like employee parking and office parking.
That would be at the second story,
Yeah, yeah.
and you would access that from grade at the rear.
from grade at the rear and possibly from internally from some of the spaces, depending on,
Yeah.
on how that works. I mean, frankly, I think the parking is overkill. We're just showing the parking here to
Yeah, I
give the
thought it was
numbers.
overkill.
I think the parking's really overkill for
Parking.
So
what?
That back
you know.
lot would be 1 story high. but
Correct,
Built into the
correct.
grade, it's like 2 stories.
Correct. And his concept is, again, these small specialty contractors that just don't have, you know, they can't park their vans and their trucks on their properties. And they're looking for spaces where they can put a couple of vans in and store some material. That's kind of the idea here for that. And, you know, again, ideally, he would like to get a retail space in the front of some type of vendor use.
Does anybody remember that was really a windmill?
No, I eat there.
I used to eat there,
I used
that
to eat there
restaurant.
too.
Yeah.
Right. Which segues me perfectly to my usual statements, which is, I think you should try to save the structure of the windmill
God.
and incorporate it.
That structure is rotted away inside.
Well, I have no idea whether it is or
It
not.
is, I went in there about a year ago.
I've got it superimposed.
Paint
The
is
1
Yeah.
for 1 with the train station.
And it's in the perfect position for you to do so, and it would make a world of good for your retail situation, if you ask me.
Yeah, I've got it superimposed on here.
Yeah.
So you can see it right there.
Right. I'm not talking about the rest of the building. I'm not talking about the feet
What about
of the windmill.
a wind turbine?
Yeah, well, you can get a little power out of it as well.
So he's got,
But seriously, it is such an iconic thing associated with Yorktown that if you could incorporate it into your architecture as an architectural element, meaning from the first story above, whether you use it as space or not, I think it's a nice thing to do given the history of Yorktown. I really do.
But how would they do the windmill? It'd be in the way of everything.
No, I'm
Well,
not,
you wouldn't
I'm
put a
not saying you're
windmill on it.
attaching the windmill itself. I'm saying save the building.
Oh, the building.
You dress it up from the exterior. I don't know what you need to do to the interior, if anything, but it's right at the point where it is at the corner of the new building,
Yeah.
and would fit right now in its placement perfectly into that building. You know, when you look at the site, it is really it's coming off as kind of a boring, very utilitarian development, and dressing up the front of it would go a long way to soften that effect, I think, and also be a little bit of a feature that has some reference to the history of the town.
I think there were offices up in that part of the windmill,
Yeah.
of the restaurant.
Somebody was living there. In the top part?
Yeah.
I know the guy that lived there. It was a little-
I mean, it's
Yeah,
been-
no, he had an apartment. He had a 3-room apartment up there.
did he turn the windmill?
No, the windmill was, never
Oh, I'm
moved.
kidding. So he has structural people looking at it right now to determine the condition and what it would take. He listened to what John said.
Yeah.
He's trying to see what.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that you can support it
Right.
with your superstructure for the roof of the single story.
Right.
Just
That would be nice.
keep the top.
It really would be.
And it looks like it moves over the entryway and it would actually provide a nice entry into at least that retail space. And I think it would be a good thing to do if you capture or hire a good architect to do that. I know you're getting excited right now, so.
Because all I keep thinking about was, so here's a funny little story. That windmill is exposed to the elements, and when it was standing on its last legs, Al Capolini and I went there for lunch because he promised the owner, I forget the guy's name, what was his name? Emilio, that we would go there. And actually, while we were eating, a bird was flying around in there. So, anyway.
No, it was Ernesto, I'm sorry.
Ernesto.
Excuse me.
Right,
yes.
Ernesto.
That's it. At any rate.
Anyway, okay.
That's my usual spiel.
So what do you think of the idea of
Great.
doing like a flex space?
I love it. I love the idea.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, right now it's an eyesore.
Yeah.
So, I mean, any improvement there is great, especially if we redo the little iconic windmill. That would be fantastic.
And you may want to see if you can scooch the building in a little different way to get a driveway from the front to the back and eliminate reduce the impact of in and out from Old Crampon.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we're gonna look at. The building at the last minute has changed slightly, so that's something, we didn't have time to look at that, but we are planning to look at that. Also, we're gonna attempt to, talk to the DOT. Phil, once Phil gets deeply involved in this, we're gonna talk to the DOT about changing the entrances, just eliminating two and moving it more in line with our,
Well, you should
our
probably,
aisle right here.
given that type of usage, you should probably end up, I would think, with one curb cut.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Get rid of two and just end up with one.
So with the topography of that property, right next door, almost next door, is the Shell station, right? And then has a kind of a loop road that goes around the entire property. Could you do that on this property, or is it just the way you have it, the building's spread?
Fine,
Oh, right next door is the lawnmower place.
Yeah, next to that is the Shell.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
next
saying
to
Where the heck
Yeah.
did that picture go? I lost the picture. Oh, there it is.
Right now, there's no entrances. that
Yeah,
go
here,
to
there's a
commercial
building,
properties.
that's right, the lawnmower building
Right,
is between the two.
but even, I guess, is that an entrance off of Old Compound?
Yeah, look at that.
Because otherwise, there's really no commercial entrances to any.
Yeah, this is the back side of our site,
Right.
right? It's kind of moderately sloped up to about here, and then she drops down pretty quickly.
Okay.
And I can't figure out what this is over here.
That's the top of the pumps.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm saying, it looks like a billboard, but it's not. You're right, it's the top of the pumps. There you go. Very good.
Now that you said that, it does, or a outdoor drive-in screen
Right.
in oblique view.
Put some solar panels on that.
Solar panels.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on that?
That's it.
Save the window.
Good luck, Joe.
All right. The last two items are town board referrals. First one is the Almeida Wetland and Stormwater Permit. Is anyone here on any of these?
Me.
Any comments?
So with Almeida, that was here before, and what's going on? Is it reigniting itself?
Yeah, I mean, it got lost in the referral process.
Okay.
We had brought in Steve Marino to prepare a mitigation plan.
Mm-hmm. Same Steve Marino that's here
Yeah,
tonight?
that guy. He hasn't changed at all.
Steve Marino.
Yeah, it's still. So we had brought in Steve Marino to prepare a mitigation plan, and we made a submission to the town clerk, and it kind of got a little lost.
Thank
So
you.
recently, we finally got it moving again,
Right.
and
So my recollection is that the level lip spreader wasn't doing what
well,
originally
There's-
thought it was supposed to be doing?
no, there's
Wetland wasn't really that wet any longer?
no.
This is the one by,
I'll take you through pretty quickly here.
you like.
Yeah.
Speed up. Come on.
We did a site visit to this, on this property.
We did.
Yeah.
I was doing good all night. Now it doesn't want to cooperate.
It's not you, Joe, it's the iron monkey.
Mm-hmm.
You get this open. Let me do it down here.
Try hitting enter when you highlight it. It might do it when you highlight the right one. No?
Now, probably like 50 of them are gonna, copies of them. Yeah, I can't see that to them, didn't I? Let's try this one. I don't know what's going on here. Okay. Okay, so. There we go.
Another opening.
Yep. Gave me a little nasty message. Okay, so to take you through this, this application started with Mr. Almeida had applied for a tree permit to clear the left side of his property here, and was granted a tree permit. Now, I have to start with it. There was several conditions that needed to be addressed here that were a concern to Mr. Almeida, and they were creating an issue to his property. There are several pipes along the back of the property from the neighboring properties which discharge onto his site. So that was one of the major concerns and one of the things we needed to address. So right here you have 3 pipes right here discharging.
Those pipes connected to gutters, or are they just surface?
They're just,
like French
they
drains?
might be whatever. We don't know. We don't know the source. We know the ends of them.
Do they constantly run?
There's a pipe here, a pipe here, a pipe there, pipe there.
Joe, are they discharging?
They are. They are discharging, and some of them, one of them, which was a larger size pipe, I forget the size, I think it's an 8-inch pipe or a larger pipe. One storm just blew down this hill right across his driveway and blew out his driveway. So that was one of the things he was trying to resolve initially, but he's also trying to get more yard space, because as you could see, this is very tight back here, and this ascends from the back of his house up to this area up here. So it's a little bit higher up in here.
So Joe, all those pipes discharge down to his house?
That's correct. So let me take you back a little further. When we originally got this project approved for a house here, the original design was that a swale was to be constructed along the back of this property and bring the water down to the wetland. That swale was never allowed to properly stabilize, so it never really stayed in place and got blown out. So hence now we're proposing to hard pipe, just pick up all the pipes and hard pipe them.
Yeah.
So
that would be the answer.
But does anything come off in terms of surface flow from there?
Yeah.
In addition to?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Those pipes, at peak time, those things just.
No, but is there any surface flow besides the piping?
Oh yeah.
That you need to also capture?
Those properties.
Come right down.
All shed right in that direction. Right.
So are you going to maintain the swale in addition to a pipe?
In addition to the pipe.
I see. Okay.
Okay. So Mr. Almeida applied for a tree permit to cut down trees, mostly on the left side of the house over here. So you applied for a tree permit, and there's a little bit of a misconception on this tree permit. So the tree permit was granted for 77 trees, but nobody looked at the list of trees. And of the 77 of the trees that he had listed, the trees he had listed, 51 were regulated trees as far as diameter goes. 41 of which, and I will let Steve speak to this, were listed by the person cutting the trees down as Norway maples, which are considered non-native trees, and 3 of the trees were dead. So the wetland, the tree permit was a little bit overblown. And there was a wetland permit also issued to do some other minor cleanup work on the property. The wetland line, let me bring you in closer here. The original flag wetland line, when the original house was proposed, is this line right here. Comes down, up, comes down, and comes down. Under the original proposal, when the house was built, there was a wetland permit granted to fill in part of that wetland. And that area, is not coming up on here. There's a red line. Well, I'm going to show you where it is, but this is the line right here. It's red dots, but you can hardly see them.
You can see it on the hard copy.
Okay. That area was the original limit. So as you can see, we're pushing out beyond that limit here a little more than what was originally approved. So during his work on the property, he expanded into the wetland area to the right of the house and did some cleanup work and cutting and whatnot in there. So based on Mr. Almeida's pension, this is what it was before he bought the house. These are pictures he had taken at the open house, so you could see what that area looked like prior. So you could see the trees that are in there. It's not heavily wooded. You could see the underbrush out in here and out back in there, and you could see down here the path, one of the paths that the water was taking, coming off that hillside and off out of those pipes. So this is what it looks like after he made an incursion into the wetland. You can see, like I said, he pushed out a little farther than what was originally approved. And for the most part, it's fairly intact as to what it was, or compared to what it was prior to. This is a debris pile of brush that he collected and dead trees he cut down, or dead trees that were lying on the ground. That's all piled. This is where he got the violation. This is where he had to stop. So this is where everything is today. In addition to that, he cleaned out an engine block, liquor bottles, other garbage and debris out of that wetland area, mostly towards the far end of the site. So at this point, he received the violation. Now we're here to address that. We are proposing some mitigation. In addition to that, I will just go quickly through all the improvements, and then Steve will talk about the mitigation.
Joe, you said he had a tree permit and a wetland permit, and yet he received a violation for what?
Well, because he went much farther in than he was supposed to.
Into the wetland.
Yeah.
And with additional trees.
Right. So as far as what Mr. Almeida would ultimately like to propose here and get approved, first of all, he wants to collect those pipes and put a swale in to keep his property dry and take that water around. The intent is to take the water from this system up here and feed the wetland with that. We construct a level spreader up here which would take the discharge and spread it out so you wouldn't get a heavy concentration of flow and therefore get a lot of erosion. This section of pipe here, he would connect that to the existing drainage system that was installed when this house was constructed out on Brookdale Street. Oh boy, okay. Additionally, what he'd like to do is slightly expand the driveway, and we're providing 2 infiltrators to pick up that additional water. There are 3 infiltrators existing here for the roof runoff and the driveway runoff from the original part of the driveway. He would like to construct retaining walls as needed along this part of the left side of the driveway. Then on the right side of the driveway along the frontage in front of the house, there'd be an additional retaining wall there too. That would be a modular block style retaining wall. The tree buffer, we'd like to plant these trees along the entire property line. Like to place a shed up here. Originally we had that shed down further. We've slid it up the hill further. We're proposing a post and rail fence to create a physical barrier between what he has developed and the tree, and add some trees in there. And I think Steve has some additional plantings that he's going to talk about. And add some additional plantings to screen this house here from actually more from his view than for their benefit. This is what we had originally said. Okay, this is the area that we want to mitigate and provide some additional mitigation in excess of what was disturbed. And Steve has taken that a step further, and he's prepared an enhancement plan for that. That's the extent of the proposed improvements that Mr. Almeida is proposing on the property. So I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to turn it
Joe,
over to Steve.
do you think those trees along the rear lot line will survive with the water coming out through the pipes?
Well, yeah, because we're going to be picking up that water. So we're
And-
putting a collector, like a header pipe, collector
Oh,
pipe. to pick up-
behind the trees?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Pick up all that water and.
All right.
So you've already done the rough grading. That's shown here, right?
No, there's a little more he'd like to do in this front corner here, just to finish this edge off.
Okay.
But for the most part,
Yeah.
it's
And so
pretty
that
much
was part of the wetland. So how much of the wetlands have been filled?
Additionally, I have that here.
The original limit of disturbance preserved all of the wetlands on the site, right?
No, the original, there was some intrusion on a wetland on the original.
Into the wetlands?
Yes,
itself?
into the wetland.
Okay.
Yep. So you want additional 52 cubic yards of fill in the wetland.
And how much square footage
About
of
715 square feet.
wetland is being filled as part of this application subsequent to the original
Correct.
715 square feet? Okay.
Yep. Steve, you want to? By the way, this is Mr. Almeida.
Real quick question. By channeling all that water to that side of the property, is there a risk of creating a pond versus a wetland? And it would seem like it's going to create more wetland than what was there. I mean,
Well, I'll let Steve answer that, but it's going to be more of a water source for the wetland to survive.
Right.
I'll let Steve answer that.
Just zoom in on this a minute here. It's a very sensitive mouse you have here, Joe.
You want me to get the zoom in for you?
I think I got it. There we go. Okay. So, structurally, the wetland hasn't really been disturbed. Some of the trees have been cut, a lot of brush has been cut out of it. But on the ground itself, the substrate hasn't really been disturbed. There are now piles of brush and wood chips in that area that will need to be coming out, but structurally the wetland itself is still intact. So what we're proposing is to do a cleanup, essentially a restoration, get that brush and extra material out of there, and then replant and reseed to restore to replace the trees and brush. The brush that was in there before is non-native stuff, but now we're going to go back in with native shrubs, a native seed mix that'll tolerate shady conditions in a wetland, because that's what we have out here, even with the remaining trees. And we'll plant some new trees. So we have 8 red maples going back in. Along the post and rail fence there that Joe described, there'll be 9 evergreens for screening, for kind of just a different tree type to use along the edge of the wetland there. And again, a physical barrier demarcating, what's the wetland area versus what's the usable yard area. And a number of native shrubs. We have gotten comments from the Tree Advisory Committee, and they're on board with the plant mix. They did have a question about specific sizes for the plants, which I neglected to put on the plan, so we will certainly update that plan when we go back to the town board with tree sizes, good-sized trees, not bare root trees or anything like that. There'll be real trees going back out there. And then we'll follow up with a seed mix, like I say, that will tolerate the shady conditions. Joe has also talked about, on his plan, restoring the drainage swale, the stone line swale there along the street, which, if there is an addition of water coming off those properties to the west, they will flow through the wetland, but then ultimately get to that drainage channel and flow off the site like it historically has done. So, again, structurally the wetland hasn't really been altered. The vegetation in the wetland has been. So that's our goal, is to replace that vegetation and get it back to the kind of condition it was, actually, again, with natives rather than some of the non-natives that were growing in there. As Joe mentioned, there was a number of Norway maples in there, which are a very undesirable tree. So,
Except for the 750 square feet at the
yeah.
southern, which is structurally filled now.
Yeah.
Okay, just by way of clarity,
Yes.
I don't,
For the record, you're
I don't mean to
No.
belabor it, I just want to be clear on it.
So if all that water is coming down from behind this house is now channeled back here, is there a likelihood that the wetland, as we see it now, would actually expand? Naturally?
There is a little bit of a slope to the wetland. It's really a slope side wetland. It's a seepage wetland where water's coming out of the ground and from those pipes to the west, and kind of traveling across a relatively flat area, but still has some pitch, and then gets to the road into the drainage system. So additional water won't make the wetland additionally wet for longer periods of time. It'll be a little wetter in storm events when there's runoff, but it kind of sheet flows right over the wetland and down into the drainage structure. If this was flatter, if there were depressional areas in there, then yes, it would hold water longer, and that could change the wetland. But because we're on a little bit of a slope here, I don't think that's really an issue.
So you don't really have any ponding there? It's more of like a mucky situation
Mucky
for
side
periods of time?
slope, kind of seepage.
Okay.
There's dense subsoil under there that kind of holds the water and doesn't really let it percolate into the ground, so it kind of moves slowly through the soil rather than moving quickly across it.
And I guess dovetailing off Rob's question, isn't it desirable to expand that function somewhat, if possible? Given that we're...
it's changing the function, so, if the board wants us to go in the direction of changing the function rather than just replacing what was there before, some minor grading, some creation of a couple of small depressional areas on the site as the water comes down and can capture that.
Yeah.
That's possible, but...
I guess what I'm getting at is, to the extent that you're filling the small amount of area, what was the function of that, and how would you, I think the question is how you would replicate that or mitigate for that lost function.
That lost corner.
That lost area and function.
If you create 750 square feet of new wetland.
Yeah.
So it's 715 and...
Yeah.
Yeah, 715, but we were creating...
If you tell me that I'm collecting all this water, I'm going to channel it over, this level lip spreader is going to work a lot better, and then so more water will be moving through the wetland area, and that is enhancing the situation even better than it was before, then, I'm getting to an understanding of, what the mitigation is doing.
I think
Not even that,
Realistically, John,
Yeah.
unless we create some depressional areas in there to hold that water for a period of time, it's not really gonna make a difference. Again, because
Okay.
we're on a slope, eventually it moves through that soil, that first 18 inches of soil, and down the hill, so.
okay.
So, the numbers that we've generated at this point, and so the total, the amount of new wetland and buffer disturbance was 3,500, a little over 3,500 square feet. And the mitigation proposed, as we had shown it, was 4,000 square feet. I mean, we can expand that, or we can,
There's some minor adjustments we can make to the existing wetland line in order to expand the wetland somewhat if that's what we're.
Yeah, I'm just,
I mean, the area is there.
Noodle- yeah.
Going forward, this will be mostly an unmaintained
Yes.
area of the property.
There is a provision for 2 years of maintenance, just to make sure that stuff that's planted and seeded grows and is viable. But once that's done, it's unmaintained, or that's the goal, is for it to be unmaintained.
Right.
Periodically going in and clearing out invasives if necessary is valuable, but the idea is for it to be
Doesn't the
Self-sustaining.
town grant, like, conservation easements to people to do that kind of thing? Is that being considered here?
You can ask for the easement, which would protect that area, but normally you would do that in an area that has like a high function. I don't know if that is,
Oh,
if this is that
This
area.
is a small corner lot wetland
Yeah.
in a residential area, so functionally, it does hold some water, it does, there's some water treatment value to it.
It does,
Habitat-wise,
yeah,
it's not
it
really
has-
doing a lot.
it has some function, so the only reason, in my view, to put any sort of conservation easement would be to prevent any further development going in that area, where somebody that has decent resources and will comes in and goes through and makes another home here by a subdivision. So I don't know that would ever happen, but we've seen people with resources and will do things that we don't expect to be done sometimes. So that would be the only reason, I would think.
What's the town board, what are they asking for from us?
This is just this is a referral from the town board.
Correct, so this is it's a wetland violation, so it's a town board action. They have to issue the new wetland permit, and we're presenting to the conservation board on Wednesday night. So, it's a matter of your, giving your response to the town board, or your recommendation to the town board.
And what were the additional trees that came down?
We should draw up a memo and
What do you mean, in the wetland?
So over and above
The original tree
the
permit?
original tree permit, there was,
There were some trees in the wetland, but according to Mr. Almeida, they were dead. They were not, he did not cut down any live trees in the wetland.
and what number were they roughly?
There are still a few dead trees over there. We had a storm that they're gonna have to. And actually, I have some pictures from the storm that shows, a large tree landing on the floor, which is actually the pile of trees, the branches right there. But most of them were like dead trees, falling trees
Okay.
and branches.
And their number approximately was
I would say maybe like
Oh.
4 or 5.
4 or 5, okay, that's all I'm asking.
And I still have, 2 large dead trees in the property, which is.
I think what we should.
And just
we
one
should-
thing I want to
Oh,
add
sorry, go ahead.
was, he had asked if he could cut the dead trees down. He had asked the engineering department, and they told him, well, if they're dead, you can cut them down. So he didn't totally go in there like a bull in a china shop and start cutting trees down. And we have that documented if you need that.
I was going to suggest is that we put together a memo back to the town board outlining some of the concerns that Rob had mentioned, make sure that there's sufficient function in the wetlands to accomplish, the drainage that they're adding to it.
Okay.
And go on from there.
And do you want me to mention the possibility of the conservation easement?
I don't know if that's, that would be up to the applicant, I think, to pursue that.
I would put it in.
And let them consider it?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, it
Well,
can't hurt.
Why don't we ask the applicant?
Right.
He's right here.
So what they're asking you to consider is doing a conservation easement. So essentially, it would probably follow our proposed fence line. And it would basically put an easement over that part of the property saying you cannot, other than maintenance, you cannot
You wouldn't
disturb
develop.
that property.
Can my
or-
daughter walk to that place?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
she
yeah.
can- yeah, she can walk.
No, no, it's not, no,
Yeah.
no, it's not like
Can my,
that.
can my daughter
If you
chase
wanted
the
to
dog there?
sell it to a
Yeah.
developer.
Yeah,
or developer
she
would
can
go
get all
there.
muddy there, yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
You're
No,
gonna
it's
have a
not
lot of
like
fun.
that. It's, you know,
Catch frogs.
Yeah, catch
Exactly. All right,
Yeah.
so again,
Now-
But you can't put a shed in there, you can't,
No.
you can't make
pool in
a
there, you
a
can't-
little gravel road for your tractor to go and store some logs, or, you can't do that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. No, I mean, it's not my intention, right? I hope I die in this house, with my family, right? I mean, in a good way, right? But there's no intention to sell in the house, and there's no intention for further development. Again, that space that I'm asking, the board on the right side, it's basically to give an entertainment area for my family. That's all.
Yeah, got it.
Right
And as a
beyond that,
benefit, couldn't his taxes get lowered
I,
with the
I
conservation?
think they actually probably
I think,
could.
I think you can, yes.
So I would suggest then that the board ask the town board to consider that.
Yeah,
Mr.
consider it,
Arenado will
yeah.
consider it as we move forward, and we'll see where it goes.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Maybe we could put the windmill on the corner,
Yeah, we can put the windmill.
relocate it.
That could pump the water out of it.
Terry, you're done, right?
I'm done.
Okay,
Thank you.
we got one more.
Let me just get out of here.
Is this within our jurisdiction? New York City Department, they wanna do don't they own the property?
Yeah, they do. It's
So
their
why
problem,
are they asking us?
Because
Well, it's our road, I think.
they're no different than anyone else who wants to do wetland work, I guess. I mean, it's a reservoir.
No,
They give
they
them
need a
hard time
wetland,
like they give everybody a hard time.
Sure.
they
And
need a
waiting a year and a
wetland
half.
permit. They say they need planning board approval and site plan approval. I don't know if
Um,
that's the case.
Just for the record, this is number 12 on our agenda. It's a town board referral for Baptist Church Road Bridge replacement. The applicant is New York City DEP on Baptist Church Road. They want our comments. I didn't see anything.
Well, one
Oh.
thing that I'm looking at is at in their list of anticipated permits, they are listing wetland permit, MS4 permit, tree permit, planning board approval, and site plan approval. So,
Site plan?
yeah, so why don't I, and maybe with Jim's help, look into that?
Okay.
So, for instance, it's a possibility because you are charged with the layout and abandoning of roads. Now, I don't know if this is really rises to
Oh.
that, but maybe we should look into that, make sure we're doing the right thing here. Maybe that's not something that is even needed, and it would just be your comments to the town board.
They anticipate adding any structures or anything like that?
They're gonna redo the bridge, as far as I recall. I mean, I saw the presentation, and they're taking down the old bridge and putting up a new one. I don't think they're changing the alignment of the road.
Doesn't look like it.
Yeah,
I was just surprised that they do that stuff at all.
It's really all engineering, from what I could see.
Yeah.
It's really not land use related.
So I'll look into that, and if you wanna generate, if they're expecting something back soon, I'll ask for more time and then take this up again on the 8th
Okay,
and just finalize it on the 8th.
that's fine.
Which I don't think you'll have much comments other than the materials that they may use for aesthetic purposes and/or whether or not you actually have some, approval or anything else, so.
Sounds
That-
good.
Okay?
Okay. Anything else?
All night.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night.
Good night.